Hi everyone, it's me. You know how sometimes you just need to get away from it all? Well, I know the perfect place for you to escape to without even leaving your seat. In fact, you won't and even have to leave this video to travel back in time to the early Jurassic period, around 200 million years ago, and you'll experience what the world was like firsthand. The herbivores of the Triassic had a tough time because they were constantly being attacked by large carnivores. Therefore, many of them developed armor, spikes, and horns to defend themselves. This guy doesn't seem too worried, though. He looks like he's getting a massage from his friend. This is a great time for insects and nocturnal animals to come out and play. There was a pack of smaller carnivores called Dilophosaurs. The name means double kind of lizard. These animals were about 6 meters long and looked very similar to the famous Velociraptor, except much larger. It was a herbivore that lived during the late Triassic and early Jurassic. Most sauropods are easily recognizable due to their extremely long necks, but this one was different. One of them was busy eating, but there wasn't much to do when food was scarce, so they decided to take a walk instead. These animals were small, no bigger than a human, and lived in herds to protect themselves from predators. It was a relative of the ceratopsids, which means it wasn't closely related to the ornithischians. It had a long, thin body with tiny arms and huge legs for running. It was probably faster than any other dinosaur of its size. Its neck was relatively short, but it still had a long tail. However, unlike the raptors, the Dimetrodon was not built for chasing down prey. He was clearly starving. He tried shaking them off, but it was no use. They were about the size of a dog and lived in groups. We flew up to a high vantage point to get a last look at the dinosaurs below. What a sight to behold! Sauropods grazed in the distance, while a group of Celodosaurus walked through the forest. A lone Dilophosaurus kept watch over the landscape, always ready to pounce on any unsuspecting prey. And as the sun set over the volcanic mountains, we knew that we had witnessed something truly special. They preferred to eat fruit, but would also consume insects and small vertebrates. I make videos about dinosaurs, ancient civilizations, mysterious discoveries, and more. Subscribe for weekly uploads. And thanks for watching. There are simply too many of them. He tripped over and fell onto his side. The end came quickly as hundreds of mandibles tore apart his flesh. These creatures didn't just attack each other, but also anything that got too close. These dinosaurs were huge, but that didn't stop the insects from swarming over their bodies. You can be seen carrying pieces of meat and scales back to their nest. Termites are scary enough today, but imagine if they grew to the size of wolves. There was a fight over the remains of a dead sauropod. The combatants were a group of phytosaurs. They lunged and bit each other, but the carcass was too big for any of them to drag away. So the fight continued until one of them finally gave up. Its legs were too short, and it spent most of its time ambushing animals that got too close. Look at this giant dragonfly. Dragonflies today are mostly small, but in the past, some species grew to enormous sizes, with some having wingspans of over 3 meters. Say hello to the Dilophosaurus. This predator wasn't quite as big as the Tyrannosaurus, but it was just as fierce. It stood about 6 meters tall and had a very distinct crest on its head. This may have been used for attracting mates or intimidating rivals. But one thing it wasn't used for was spitting poison, as seen in the movie. This is pure fiction. So join me on this journey through time as we explore the incredible beasts that roamed the Earth during this period. The Earth is lush, green, and covered in water. It was a type of Thyreophauron, which means it was related to both the Stegosaurus and Ankylosaurus. But this guy was even cooler. He had thick armor and plates running down his back, as well as several rows of sharp spikes. He also had a small skull with short horns above the eyes. Tall volcanic mountains stretched towards the sky with waterfalls cascading down their slopes into the lowland plains. There are also vast swamps filled with life. As we fly across the landscape, the first animal we see is an amphibian that looks like a cross between a frog and a crocodile. This is a labyrinthodontid, a type of amphibian that lived until the end of the Permian. However, the majority of them went extinct during the Great Dying. But this one swam right past our flying machine without noticing us. Then we came across a herd of herbivorous archosaurs. These are the ancestors of crocodiles and dinosaurs. They look like a mix between a crocodile and a deer, with their elongated jaws and multiple horns. These animals were known as phytosaurs. These creatures were mostly amphibious, spending their days on land and their nights in the water. That's right, these dinosaur called a Compsognathus is covered in feathers, but it wasn't alone. This was common among dinosaurs living in warm climates. But now let's see some more dinosaurs. There they are, a group of small ornithischians, ankylosaurs. Sauropods would eventually become the largest animals to ever walk the earth, but these guys were still pretty small compared to their descendants. This species was called Anchisaurus. Their heads resembled other sauropods, but their bodies were shorter and thicker, giving them a more bear-like appearance. Some scientists believe that this species was about 6 meters long and weighed almost 3 tons. Speaking of friends, did you know that some dinosaurs were feathered? Then we saw something truly massive. A group of early sauropods was migrating in a herd. As the sun began to set, the temperature dropped, and the dinosaurs sought shelter in the forest. While most of the dinosaurs slept, a few were wide awake and ready to hunt. Now, we're going to meet one of the most famous dinosaurs of all time. The same one that featured in the original Jurassic Park movie. We found another dead animal, but this time it belonged to a creature that looked like a mix between a horse and a sail-backed dinosaur. This is a prosauropod. Some dinosaurs were even more unique, like the Celodosaurus. After walking through the forest for a while, he came across a group of his friends. Speaking of food, we saw a small herd of herbivores with long necks and tails. These were prosauropods, the relatives of sauropods. Then we spotted a lone carnivore hiding in the bushes. This dinosaur was called a Colophysis. Suddenly, a huge swarm of insects flew overhead. This must have been a huge colony of termites. There were so many of them, it's hard to even count. This Celodosaurus wasn't taking any chances. He ran away before the termites could surround him. But there was nowhere to hide. They were everywhere. What a terrible way to go. But the scared lizard wasn't the only animal hunted by insects. Even the mighty Dilophosaurus was attacked by termites. It seems like nothing is safe in this world. Not even a carcass is left untouched for long. But it was worth waiting for. The lucky winner got the meal of a lifetime. Hey, just look at how much he ate. Then we saw a group of small animals darting around the trees. These were called earsaurs. Finally, it was time to say goodbye to this world. Hey there. If you enjoyed this video, check out my other videos about dinosaurs.